Back, you're watching Citizen Extra. Shortly, we'll be crossing over to the Eldoret Cathedral Catholic Church, where the Requiem Mass for the late Catholic Bishop Cornelius Korir is taking place. We'll be going there to follow the proceedings. Shortly, you can see among the dignitaries there, Charles Keter, the Energy Cabinet Secretary, and former Cabinet Minister Henry Koskei. Uasin Gishu Governor Mandago is also there. So we'll be going there shortly. To our guests in studio again, thanks for staying with us. Finally, we're talking about the way forward in the Kenyan political crisis that we have right now, although as Kimunya and the Jubilee team say, it is not a political crisis, it's a political denial from one side. The other side also say it's a political denial from the other side. So that just shows you the problem we have as a country right now. Of course, there are some that have been calling for dialogue. There are conditions that have been set already for this dialogue from both sides. NASA says if there is to be dialogue, it has to be about on the parameters of elections, constitutionalism, and democracy and the law. Jubilee on the other side are saying they can talk about anything, but they're not going to talk about elections again. So how do we move from this?
First of all, is to acknowledge that indeed we are in a crisis. It's like people whose plane has crashed and they're insisting that no, we are just fine, even though they survived the crash. They're insisting, no, we are just fine. Let's just move on by whatever means. And there are more than enough examples. I know we cannot go into them on this show because we've discussed this a lot. We'll still have time to discuss, but let me give you one. In a nation, in a country like ours, we aren't even a nation actually, in a country like ours, you get someone purporting that they have obtained orders of the Court of Appeal to overturn orders of a High Court, and then it turns out those orders were fake. And actually we would just say, let's move on. Yet nothing was filed at the Court of Appeal. No, the judges of the Court of Appeal, though the head of the court empaneled a panel, but two of them are from outside Nairobi. They were only called to come and sign. One judge came up with this thing at night. There's nothing at the registry. And then we are telling each other as a nation, as a country rather, let's just move on. That is enough to shock us into stopping and saying, hold on. Do we have a gangster government in place? What's going on? Even those in Jubilee, it's enough to shock them that a judge of the Court of Appeal can fake court orders. And then the country accepts and says, let's move on. That is where we must begin, by acknowledging there's something seriously wrong with the country. We must sit together as people of the same country if we aspire to turn this country into a nation, and speak about what is wrong to each other. And for us in NASA, we've particularly identified the failure of the experiment of democracy, constitutionalism, and rule of law. Mainly those three, but which you can go into many details. But let's stop and talk to each other very candidly. Yes, Jubilee has been in power since 2013, but has failed. Is there anything better? Uhuru? Is there a different Uhuru and Ruto? What will change about these two gentlemen? Okay. Nothing. So let's begin by first acknowledging there is a problem, and acknowledging that we need to speak to each other as people who belong to the same country.
Without those conditions that even NASA has.
It cannot be. Those are the rules of engagement. We negotiate rules of engagement. NASA is bringing it to the table very openly. It's what its conditions are, and everybody else comes and says what their conditions are. But then at the minimum, we accept, yes, there's a problem. Okay. So let's talk. And then with give and take, a spirit of give and take. As a country, then you get to sit together, talk, and come up with solutions on the way forward. Okay.
Deputy President Ruto was very categorical on this. President Kenyatta also said, if I'm going to, I'll announce whatever next I'll do after all the processes are done. From Jubilee, are you planning to talk to NASA, or what are you planning to do?
I think the first thing we need to agree on is that we went into an election so that one party could get a mandate to carry out the reforms it promised the people of Kenya. Now, NASA promised people of Kenya that we will do all these reforms. They failed to secure the presidency, they failed to secure the Senate, they failed to secure Parliament, right? So, what I would like to see is NASA coming with their manifesto to us and say, we thought these things were good for Kenya, right? Now that we are in Parliament together, and that's why I'm asking my friend Chris, bring those things together. Let's sit in Parliament. Let's even constitute caucuses in Parliament. And we look at, this is what NASA wanted to do, but because they don't have the opportunity, because the people of Kenya have denied them that opportunity through the ballot, what can we take and domesticate and put within the law, right? That is the way to go, within the established legal frameworks, so that whatever we come up with, we will have the force of law. Now, taking the same thing to Bunge la Mwananchi out there, or taking it to Uhuru Park, or taking it to the street, how does it get into the law? It just excites people out there, right? And we end up with very good ideas, but they're on the street, right? They cannot come to Parliament because once you bring an idea that has been generated from the street, I will not respect it. But if it comes that this is the NASA as a party have the following proposals that they would like us we consider together, I would be happy to consider it because I'm also Kenyan. I have a grandchild. I would want to see my grandchild growing in a better Kenya than we have come through now. I don't want to see my grandchild being faced with some militia throwing stones into a school compound, right? Thank you. I don't want my grandchild not having to go to school because the streets have been closed, because there's Bunge la Mwananchi NASA edition having street protests. So
what you're saying, they should do it through Parliament again? That's
let's do it through the established legal frameworks.
Listen,
if there are problems in court, for example, like Simeka is saying, let us address those things through the Judicial Service Commission. Let a formal complaint be sent through the JSC to say that we are unhappy with the way this thing was conducted. And NASA can do that, right? But when we say, because there are institutions that are in place legally, but because the people of Kenya have denied us the opportunity to participate in those through the ballot, we are now going to create our parallel institutions, to fight those that are there and weaken them and replace them with street violence, with intimidation, with with terrorism and radicalization of our youth.
Okay, Honorable Wamalwa.
Yeah, thank you, Hussein. Allow me, please, to pass my message of condolences to the Diocese of Eldoret, where the late Bishop Cornelius Korir was the head. And about 3 weeks ago, I was actually seated on this table with Cornelius Korir before elections. And I remember his words that the two leaders, Raila Amolo Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta, must sit together and must dialogue. Bishop Cornelius Korir was a peacemaker, was a very humble person. And in my own capacity as the chairman of the Catholic Members of Parliament, we've had so many engagements as far as bring peace together in this country and bring dialogue together. So may the good Lord give strength to the people of Eldoret at this difficult time, and hopefully we'll be there to give him a send-off on that very day. Now, my closing remarks.
And also all of us Christians.
Okay, all of us Christians. My closing remarks for this, Hussein, I want to borrow the words of Martin Luther King Jr. And Martin Luther King Jr., you know, he was a respected human rights activist in the United States. And he said this, that we should learn to live together as brothers, or we perish together as fools. This is the message to Jubilee. This is the message to NASA. This is our country. We own it. So we must sit together. We must dialogue together as the way forward. And in any case, when it comes to dialogue, you must have issues. Let the committees be together. And this dialogue should be outside Parliament, not within Parliament. Outside Parliament for purposes of objectivity. As I said earlier, Parliament takes partisan positions. So let's have the good-willing people. Let's have a committee in place. As people go to the Supreme Court, I have no doubt that the Supreme Court is going to nullify this sham election. As you wait for nullification, please, let's have dialogue together, so that within this dialogue, let's have those minimum irreducibles from both sides of the divide, so that we can heal this country and move together as a team. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very quickly. I think we started off in politics and we actually forgot to do our condolences to one of the greatest Episcopal bishops that we may remember. And it's true what Mheshimiwa Wamalwa has said. We will remember Bishop Korir as a peacekeeper, as a peacemaker. You remember the 1991-92 clashes. I mean, he came out very clearly. And actually, I would like to beg or urge our viewers to take a book that he wrote, Amani Mashinani. It is an amazing book. I mean, he has actually written so much that I think Kenyans need, you know, need to actually learn and understand. And if we are to remember Bishop Korir, posthumously, I think let us remember him in his words in the books that actually he wrote. You may remember he was actually so against people intimidating IEBC, whether it was Jubilee or NASA. He was going to give IEBC a conducive environment to work. So this is somebody who was a peacemaker. Finalizing this debate, I think I would disagree highly with removing discussions and debates from Parliament. We don't have any other house. Yes. The minute they leave Parliament, honestly, they'll not be able to be controlled. What did Barack Obama teach us? And he actually fervently grounded that idea that if you are going to lead people by dividing them, it will be very hard for you to bring them back. So we need to be alive to that fact that we only have a representation through Parliament. The minute we fish out that representation, we are going actually to lose the ball. And why am I talking about ensuring that we move into Parliament? Because it is a very structured house. And when I talk about a very structured house, it does not matter who has the numbers. I like the fact that Mheshimiwa has been able to bring bills in Parliament and they passed. What I'm talking about is the intellectual dishonesty that may actually suffice in Parliament, where you are telling people this bill is against you, it is not, and you bring in fights. Look at the security bill that we saw. When it passed, did it actually realize half of the negativity that people are talking about in Parliament? It did not. Did anybody come to mess with your phones? No. Has anybody actually? As a matter of fact, actually part of it.
But look at
it.
So we have the mechanism.
Yes, look at how it has helped this country deal mainly with terrorism. We have captured that clearly. So it is not erroneous, and it is wrong for people to say any bill that comes to Parliament is hogwash or should not be debated because Parliament is bipartisan. I think that is wrong. Finalizing, I think, as we move along, we must start asking ourselves, how do we structure dialogues in Parliament? Well, everybody must first of all breathe the freshness of moving the country forward, because like I've told you, I don't think we'll have a Parliament that will be equal. You'll have one that has higher number of this party and another one of this party. So the issue is, how do we bring our minds together? How do we put our country as an icon and put it in our lens and say, this is the direction we want to follow? Bringing it out of Parliament, we are going just to see a degeneration of people saying, avoid this product, avoid this service. And by the way, it will not affect the multinationals as people think. It will affect the Mama Mboga, it will affect the person who runs a kiosk. And you've seen it in the past. When people are told, for you to board a matatu, you must produce an ID. Is that why we want to take this country back? I think we need to run away.
Yes.
All right.
Just
I want you to allow me this one for Chris, because I'm afraid that Chris will leave this table with too much false optimism, especially after giving that Martin Luther King
He was
quote.
trying to help, isn't it?
No. I just want him to leave. When he lives with realism.
Okay.
The Jubilee of that time then killed that guy who said that. Just the same way, Msando is dead and many other people are dead. So don't live with optimism that when you are faced...
But you're not saying for a fact that Jubilee killed...
Well, it's of that time. When I say that, you understand.
I mean, it's good to be very clear.
It's a figure of speech. Not Jubilee killed Msando. No, I don't mean that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for that.
And actually, Jubilee had nothing to gain from that.
Yeah. So what I mean, the system of that time. There was Parliament, there was Congress, there was Senate, there were all manner of institutions, but they killed the great man that he's just talked about. So don't leave the table with too much optimism. We just, those of us who are still alive, have to just keep thanking God, but keep in this fight.
Okay. And I think what we're looking at is there's obviously a divide within Kenya, and people out there have been misled that the divide is because of the election. But how do we actually bring Kenya back? I would like to see a situation where the Council of Governors is meeting, right? And actually going around the country, reconcile the people, like what's happening between Kericho and Kisumu. I would like to see us, as we debate in Parliament, we then take this debate between the two of us to Kiminini, so we can talk to the people together, and they see the members of Parliament are actually bringing the nation together, right? But if you kill the Council of Governors, an institution where governors are able to sort out their issues, if you kill the county assemblies and their framework for resolving issues, if you start killing Parliament because you want to have a parallel Parliament, right, then we are actually missing an opportunity where we can start bringing the people of Kenya together to coalesce on issues and to see that we as leaders we are chatting here, we will go and have our tea, we will go and have our drink, and I would like to see our people following suit, so that those people who are not in Parliament, the civil society, let them do their bits, right? Let them get on the street. But all the elected leaders let them also take up their leadership roles and lead this country forward.
All right.
Now that everybody is saying second round, let me also say something. It's good suggestion, but I want Honorable Kimunya to know the Council of Governors, their primary responsibility is actually in the IBEC, not on these matters. These matters, we need Raila Amolo Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, and some religious leaders and the civil society. We want it at the apex. We don't want it at the middle level. Dialogue is the way forward, but we don't want it to go down to the Council of Governors or parliamentary. No.
I'm saying,
we want the president.
Just to be clear.
Okay.
What I'm basically saying is that we have formal institutions that we can have several dialogues taking place, right? It does not mean that all that dialogue will not then end up with one product.
So it's a bottom-up approach.
It's a bottom-up. Let's first of all heal people at that level. Let's stop putting them on the street. Let's start healing them.
But for us to heal the people, it must be top-bottom up.
And also,
bottom-up cannot work.
And also, just so that I finish with this one, now that I'm back, one of the reforms I would like us, Stephen, to discuss with Chris is perhaps it's time we brought a law on how many times you can lose before you are denied the opportunity to start again. So that if, for example, I lose...
That one is against the political rights. You cannot
but we also
the
do.
Political rights,
but we also limit somebody that as a winner, you can only win 2 times.
No.
So surely,
the
as a
winning
loser,
is already
you can only lose so many times because people have people have refused to take moral responsibility for losing.
I think we'll go back to how we began.
So we bring up
thank you so
the
much,
Anti-Raila Act.
Not anti-Raila. We saw it in David Cameron when he lost the referendum, he resigned.
Honorable Kimunya, thank you so much for your time.
Bill of Rights must be through referendum.
Honorable Kimunya and Honorable Chris Wamalwa and political analyst Gabriel Muduma and Joseph Simecha, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Keep watching Citizen X. We're back after this break with News Trends.